So here's a simplistic diagram, but something that you might want to use as a potential simple interface to look at for something that would be specific to continuum, although again you might decide you wanted to make this collaborative and call it something else. But for simplicity, we'll call it I-continuum. You can have all sorts of things that are fit into this, and it's probably worth having different areas or domains that can easily be usable. So you really may want to divide this up so that you have diagnostics, and this would be diagnosis, including pathology data, imaging workup, and staging either by NCCN guidelines or what you use a continuum. For decision support, that's what I'm specifically talking about. This would be another element that would fit in adjacent to outcomes, which would fit in under a separate category. And again, that separate category as well could either be continuum data or a research sort of review of the literature. And similarly, survivorship, I think, is also worth considering, including in something that would be a more comprehensive tool. And this is just in these different categories lined up to sort of match the continuum logo. Now, if you were to go into that yellow box and start looking at the decision support component, you could look at submitting clinical data. So the first screen on the left is the first page you would go to. You'd decide if this were a certain subsite with a drop-down menu, and then select if this was definitive, meaning no surgical treatment, or if in fact you were looking at post-operative care. And then you could select, based on the fact that this was either a clinical stage or post-operative pathologic stage, your T stage and end stage. Hit save and continue, go to the portion on the right, and for sake of argument, we put in tonsillar fossa, clinical T2N1, and you can then enter how you obtain that nodal data. If you want, or for simplicity, you just want to leave that out, you could just then enter which of those different areas were clinically involved, ipsilaterally and contralaterally, and that could then query the database to then give you the endpoint that you want. So that would be a way to potentially design this. That could then give you a way of displaying those nodal areas at risk. This is one display where it could give you, for example, a percentage of involvement of the tonsillar fossa, both ipsilaterally and contralaterally. Now you could just give the numeric display, or you could also say, well, let's pull from the database into that and also highlight what's recommended either by continuum, by RTOG, by one of those specific articles that I cited, depending upon how you want to present that. Or you could just present this and leave it as is, and leave it to the clinician to decide how they're going to make use of this in their treatment field design. The twist, of course, is this applies really also to then deciding how are you going to look at dose painting options, because you may have a CTV1 and CTV2, not just one target volume. So there are other areas that would have to be addressed to see if this is relevant, and if you're going to include that additional complexity, you have to account for that in how you design it. There is also the way of, just saying you're going to give those recommendations and dotting the areas that you want. This is another way of displaying it. So you wouldn't have percentages, but you'd have a checkbox or something for the areas that would be covered. You can also tailor this further to give information about GTV if you wanted. You could also give NCCN treatment options by subsite and T&M stage. This could include surgery, it could include external beam, brachytherapy, or other options depending upon what was felt to be the most suitable. But again, that has to be figured out in the user interface and how you want to use it. The key piece is really how are you going to use this practically. And right now, if you have access to putting this on a mobile phone or an iPad, you're going to have much better dissemination, because outside the United States and developed countries where maybe they do have enough PCs, the cost is too high for developing nations to be able to use this, and mobile technology is critical to be having available for clinicians outside the US. It's also probably easier to use in clinic if I want to look a patient up. And the other plus is if you actually turn it into an app, it would be a way that either, if you offered it free, great, or it also could be a revenue stream for Continuum as well. If you wanted to sell this, I think it would be something that you would get a sense of the demand pretty quickly. Now, the other piece